Tell me what we're trying to achieve here.
The same thing as the last time we met. I kill you.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Welcome back to another NCART movie review. Today we have Rebel Moon, Part 2, The Scargiver. What a name for a movie. But anyways, surely this can't be as bad as the first one. Let's find out.
The plot of this film picks up straight after the ending of the first film, and it begins with the resurrection of General Shit Haircut, and he's in Ra's al Ghul's Lazarus Pit and has been resurrected, and he wants to return to the planet that Cora and her friends are hiding out on to exact revenge on them and also pick up the grain. And the first 45 minutes of this film is Farm Simulator. You're pretty much just playing the Farm Simulator game. It is the most boring first 45 minutes of a movie you've ever seen. To make it even more boring, they decided to put most of it in slow motion, which was a great decision from Zack Snyder. Congratulations. You successfully bored every single person that's ever watched this movie. Outside of the first 45 minutes, the rest of the movie is just a gigantic battle taking place on the planet that we saw in the first film, where all the villagers are living that Cora has taken to become her family. And straight off the bat, Djimon Hounsou in this movie is pretty much the main character. He has taken the lead, which is a great addition from the first movie, because in the first part, he was pretty much just a background extra. I can't even remember one line he even said in the whole movie. I can't even remember what his character was doing in that whole first part of the movie. He was just a background character. But in this movie, luckily, thankfully, one of the small shining lights in this horrific series of movies is in part 2. He has a much bigger part in the movie where he has heaps of lines, heaps of dialogue, and he's pretty much one of the main characters in this movie.
And the biggest question about this whole film, is it better than the first one? Honestly, it is. If you skip past the first 45 minutes, like Geordie said, it is purely action, and that's what we initially wanted in the first review. Like we said, was we need action. We need no backstory, no nothing, just pure action from her and all her crew. And what happens? They give us another backstory. Zach, we already know that these people are together because they hate the Imperialists. We don't need another fucking sob story that you're going to bring on and more backstory that we don't need. We don't need that lore, dude. Let's just get to the action, or cut that and put that in the first film and leave it there. Why are we going back and rehashing shit that we don't need to know?
Did we not learn that in the very first movie? It's a cheap way for Zack Snyder to sort of rehash the whole part 1. And the movie directly takes place one day after the ending of part 1. So we don't need any of that rehashed. But for some reason, he decides to do it as a cheap way to, I guess, feel some sort of connection to these characters. Because if you watched our review on the first movie, there is no connection to any of these characters. You do not give a shit about any of the characters. I don't even know any names of half of the characters. I know Cora's, that's it. One of the characters doesn't even have a name. So that's all you need to know about the depth that these characters are explained at.
We understand all the backstory to these characters. Don't hash it out. Let's just move on to the action. Now, let's talk about the action, because most of it was questionable. The choreography, very mild. Once again, very mediocre. There wasn't enough fight choreography at all. I think in one scene you could actually see Sofia Boutala's character holding onto a wire. That's how much they gave a shit about this. They just thought, let's chuck in a CGI moment where she might look cool because we'll put it in super slow motion. But you could literally see her holding a goddamn wire. And I think it's in the trailer, one of the clips. It is one of the most prominent captures for this movie is this scene.
That has to be probably the worst hero landing I've ever seen in my entire life.
Half of the dialogue in this as well was just not needed. Honestly, they're giving random scenes of slow motion about Djimon Hounsou filling up his water canteen. Why the fuck is that in this film? Why are we watching any of that? It had to be written by ChatGPT.
The dialogue just doesn't feel like anything in this movie. It just feels forced. It feels fake. Like, even one driving factor in this movie is a relationship between Gunnar and Cora. And it just, I don't even remember them like having even the slightest bit of romantic moment in the first part. Maybe because I've tried to completely block that whole movie out of my brain. But in this second film, they're just completely in love and loved up. And it just feels weird and dumb. And it feels like a cheap way for Cora to want to fight for these village Viking space people. And it just felt flat. Completely flat. Like this whole movie does, I suppose, and this whole series does. But just pump the action. Because that's when this movie works. When there's lots of action scenes, when there's lots of space Vikings fighting. That's when this movie worked.
And they should have done that in the first adaptation of this. All should have been lore built. Even if it was boring, even if you do burn a movie, at least we know some lore or some type of romanticized version of the characters where we can connect to. But that's not what this guy's done. He's tried to rush both of these films, it feels like. He hasn't even put any thought into the dialogue, any thought into the scripts. And the characters can't even, or the actors, cannot even attach themselves and portray what they want to do. But if you overlook all of that and you go straight into the action, I guess that's where it kind of thrives, this film. It kind of lives in the moment of, is she going to kill General Bad Shit Haircut from Dumb and Dumber?
Good day, mate.
Let's put another shrimp on the barbie.
And is she going to eventually liberate more of the rebel moon people who they live on a fucking planet Arrakis over there? That's the only thing you can think of. Other than that, there's nothing really to this film. Like, if you're going in thinking, I haven't watched the first one, but I'm really interested into maybe starting on the second one, don't watch either. Just watch this review, and that's the best thing you can do, because we can save you 4 hours of your life. Half of it is slow-mo. Literally, like 25 minutes of this movie is slow motion. Nothing needs to be in there. We do this on ×2 speed. We've saved you and liberated you for the next fucking 4 hours, so you're welcome.
And another thing that didn't make sense in this movie was, in the first film, it was clearly stipulated that the whole idea for the Imperialists attacking the planet was they wanted the grain. They wanted the grain from the space Vikings. That's all they cared about. And it was stipulated that to get the grain, the harvest would take way too long, would take way too many people. That's why the Viking leader gets murdered, because, it's so hard, we can't give you the grain. Now, in this film, Jimon Hansu decides, we're going to use the grain to our advantage. We're going to fortify our defenses, fortify our bases by using the grain as cover, because the Imperialists don't want to destroy it because they want the grain to survive, right? How long do they have from that moment to when the Imperialists get there? 4.5 days. Okay, we're going to do the whole harvest. How? How do they do that? How can they possibly do it? They have less people than they did last time. The main Viking's dead. We're going to do it all. Because they've got 3 more people? Oh, wow. They fortify all their defenses. They harvest the whole farm. They teach every woman, man, and child on the village to shoot a gun and wield a blade in 4.5 days. How?
To Zack Snyder, slow-mo equals time manipulation, by the way. That's how he thinks that he can skip along 7 weeks of harvest.
And on top of that, they dug out all these trenches, Vietnam style, to the point where they could stand up in these tunnels below the village and create a whole guerrilla warfare in 4.5 days. Like, come on, man. Just make it a month. Do a time jump. 6-month time jump. General Bad Haircut had to sit in the incubator for 6 months to remake his body. I don't know. But 4 days, when in the first film it was clearly stated that they could not do the grain or the harvest in 3 weeks or whatever it was, it just makes no sense. That's like a clear inconsistency. And then they turned that 4 or 5 days into a whole slow motion montage. It just felt so ridiculous. And the vibe I got watching it was, this could have easily been a TV show, and I think it should have been a TV show. I don't think Zack Snyder really is into that forum, into that medium of making a TV show, but with a TV show, they could have had 5, 6, 7, or 20 episodes to build up a complete universe, a complete character arc, a complete everything. And I think the basis of this show would have been a lot better as a TV show. Watching it, I got Star Trek vibes. 80s, 90s Star Trek vibes. And I think that's what Zack Snyder should have gone with. I think it would have worked so much better, and he would have gotten way less backlash rather than trying to fit a whole 30 years worth of lore like he did, like Star Wars is, into 2.5 movies. Another scene that sort of had you scratching your head was towards the end, Korra blows up a gigantic ship, and I mean, yes, the ship is huge, and it starts falling out of the sky, and for the next 15 minutes in the movie, she's sliding down this ship. This ship was built by the same manufacturers who built the factory in Expendables 4 that just went forever and ever and ever. It was built by the same company that built the runway in Fast and Furious, where it never ended, because she and Gunner and General Bad Haircut were sliding down this ship for 10 scenes in a row, and it never ended. The ship never... How big is this damn ship? And then somehow they can slide all the way down to the bottom and her ship survives? That's just one of many stupid things that this show did. I mean, General Bad Haircut is a T-600. He has infinite plot armor. He can't be killed. His character, for some reason, is just this sadomasochist guy who, he gets punched in the face, he just turns around and smiles at him like, oh, that felt great. How?
And also, the fact that they killed off probably their most important character is the worst script writing I've ever seen. You can't build... Probably the only one who has decent backstory or lore to her, who's the samurai lady in this with the rip-off lightsaber swords. And she dies to legitimately nobodies. These people are stormtroopers / Kratos with a good beard. How can the number one warrior die to nobodies? That should be impossible.
Especially when in the scene, she's taking these guys, I think it's 3-on-1, 4-on-1 or whatnot, and there's a group of women, children, and older people behind her, about 50 of them, and they're just sitting there watching her get mutilated, watching her get murdered. Like, I know they're there because they can't really fight or they can't defend themselves or whatnot, but strength in numbers. All they had to do was just get up, grab a chair, grab a freaking coffee cup, grab anything, start throwing it at these guys, and Samurai could have destroyed them live to fight another day. But it was for her story arc to die defending a child because she didn't get to die defending her own children or whatnot. I don't know, some cheap, easy way to have I guess, completion to her arc. But that was stupid. Why did none of them get up to defend her? They all just stood there and thought, yeah, she can die.
And it's crazy they let her die. Like, the whole 45 minutes of the movie was teaching the villagers how to fight. I know this is like a spoof of Star Wars. You could kind of call it a spoof or an offset of Star Wars,
or
at least.
A fuck you to Star Wars because you didn't accept my script.
Exactly.
Disney, so
that
you can get stuffed.
But he did copy the exact same title sequence that they have at the start and the ship that they are on in the start of the movie. Now, that was the only good-looking part of this film. That was it. And that's the one thing I got to give to Zach, was that cinematography or that CGI or VFX was made perfectly. Everything else was so questionable.
It is a C-grade TV movie. That's what it is. It's what it feels like. And it's a high-budget B-grade, C-grade movie. And I think it's no fault to the actors and the actresses in this, because I'm sure if they had a great script and a great movie, they could come up with something a lot better. But it just, something along the way of this movie just didn't make sense. It didn't work. I don't know if it is maybe a spoof.
What? You went over my helmet?
Maybe Zack Snyder will come out and say, hey, for this one I just decided to throw everything at the wall and see what stuck. I don't care what it looked like, I just wanted to put my ideas out there. Fair enough. But you're going to get rinsed for it because it's not a very good movie and it's not up to the standard that we know Zack Snyder can do. In the review for part 1 of this movie, we mentioned that we felt like a lot of this movie had been cut. I mean, it's a Zack Snyder movie. There's probably 10 hours of footage on the cutting room floor. But that was really pushed in this movie when a crucial character, or one of the main characters towards the end of part 1, was not in this movie at all, or mentioned, or spoken about, or anything in the whole of part 2 until right at the end, when the movie is pretty much finished, the giant battle is over, and this person comes through with her space battalion and mops up the stragglers of the enemy with like 30, 40 ships or something. And where were you? This whole planet was about to get destroyed because they didn't have any firepower at all. And then this character comes in right at the end and is like, oh, I'm here. We can fight and kill all these people. Like, the battle's over. The big ship's been knocked out of the sky. Why are you here? Where did you come from? And then 5 minutes later, on the final scene of the whole movie where they're sort of setting up for what's going to be a part 3, hopefully not, she has like the final dialogue and the final like monologue of the movie where if we're going to fight together and we're going to take it and we're going to save this. Where have you been? Why are you having the final model? It's like her whole character was cut out of the movie and Zach went, oh shit, I've got to put her in there because she's in the credits. I've got to put her in there somewhere. Let's just cut this scene that I had originally halfway through the movie and I'll just chuck it right at the end there and then she's in the movie. Like, that felt so random.
So the rating for this film, I'm going to give it better than what I gave our first review. I'm going to give it a 10%. I gave the last one a 5, but this one's getting a 10 only because it was just that squeaky little bit better than the first one. Still sucked. I still don't rate this highly. I still don't think you should watch it. But there's nothing to these films. It's just an immense amount of slow motion that's just overinflated and oversaturated with. And the fight choreography, I think, if you're going to do that, the fight choreography needs to be good. At least some type of action scene needs to be good. Most of it wasn't, because it's not, the movie's not going for dialogue, not going for character development, even though they put that shit in there for fucking zero reason, but it shouldn't. And it comes across that way. It comes across as half-assed. I'm just not about it. So I don't think you should watch this. Please, Zach, don't do a fucking third one. We know you're a good director, but right now you've done 2 shit movies. Fix it and then come back later on, please.
Part 1, I think I rated 0%, which I deserve. For this one, it's a little bit better. I'll give it probably a 10 to 15% because while they went away from the ridiculous side quest storyline in part 1, in this one, they just honed down on the action sequences. And for the most part, I guess they sort of worked. It was just TV, B-grade movie CGI. It felt like a Star Trek episode. It sort of worked. It was at least a little bit more interesting. The first 40 minutes is just the most boring 40 minutes of a film you'll ever see. Farm Simulator mixed with sob stories that we do not care about because we don't care about any of these characters. I'm not really sure what Zack Snyder's going for on these movies because they're just sort of missing the mark. But I think if he had been given the wheels of a Star Wars franchise, I think it could have been something pretty good because he's got wild ideas and that's Zack Snyder all over. He's wild. It's just, his fingerprints are all over this movie. You can see it in bits and pieces, but we just expect better of him. And I mean, this could probably one day become a cult classic. I don't know. Like, it's so bad that it's good. It has the hallmarks of that, maybe. I'm not sure, but yeah.
Anyway, guys, it's been another NCut movie review. Do not forget to leave a like and subscribe.
What's your favourite Zack Snyder movie? For me, it would be 300.
Yeah, me too. This is NCut, motherfucker! Anyway, guys, peace. We out.
Peace.
NCut.